I'm not sure if you can hear that, but no one's shooting at me or us. It's fireworks. The festival goes on. It's a long weekend. It is. Is it Sunday? I think I'm talking to you on Sunday evening, and Monday is the day off for Gandhi's birthday or some Gandhi celebration. Jayanti, I think that's birthday, yes. It's also a transport dispute strike or something going on. There was on Friday in Bangalore. So I didn't get to go to the Patimokkha in Bangalore, as in the city, as I had expected to do. But this wasn't a problem. I had the usual, not the usual, I had the Indian style evening puja in our little temple here with the young Samaniras and Anagarika, the novice, the trainee monks here. And they were then able to take their Dasa Sila, which is like Panchasila, 5 precepts, but 10 precepts. So normally on the Uposatha they should do that, and I'm not here because I'm in the city. We could do it any time, of course, but we don't always get round to it. So on this occasion that's what we did. And then subsequently they seem to have taken over the little temple there. So if you're wondering, but probably not, why there haven't been live chantings, there have been things going on in there. They've been doing some pujas with their fast Pali Indian chanting, and I've left them to it because it seems when I go and do my thing in there, maybe it puts them off. And as I'm 2/3 of the way through the Vasa this time here, there's no point in getting too involved in arrangements and conversation. There's no conversation. The language, I don't have any foreign language skills, I'm afraid. So I'm leaving them to it for a little while. I still do my own little thing, a little chanting, not the full chanting, but enough if it's necessary. So maybe I'll get back into that live routine tomorrow, as it's early morning, when they won't be about. But that's not been so much of a disruption, but a pleasant change. Although I had quite a severe headache on Saturday morning, and then we had some elders of this tradition here in India come to visit for the day for lunch. I'm not sure why they came really, but they came, and again everything had to be all, they all spring into action yeah, when something like that goes on. I carried on as normal and sat in here with my headache, and by that evening I didn't feel like chanting or doing anything really other than just meditating, which is a wonderful way with a headache to reduce tension in the neck and shoulders and around the temples, so you can really help a headache through meditation. It's one of its practical uses. And that really brings to mind a question I had, a comment. That was what I was going to do, talk about some questions and comments, and if we start with that one as it's come to mind, if I can find it. How do I do that? About healing and such like. Okay, and so I will try and get back into the routine. I might also, though, alter it a little bit, make it shorter, a little shorter the chanting, still in Pali and English, but with a little time for meditation. We'll see how it goes. This question, what's the difference between giving metta, mudita, and other healing techniques like Reiki, etc. Is healing others allowed in Buddhism? Can it be harmful for the healer or the receiver? Right, there's a number of questions in that one question. Thank you, subscriber, for your question. I will try to talk about this. So firstly, what is the difference between giving metta, mudita, and other healing techniques? Okay, well, I don't want to get too much into the terminology because this could be a slight translation issue. But we're not really... I know the practice of metta is often described as such, radiating metta. Metta means loving kindness. Also, the rest of the Brahma Viharas are compassion, karuna, compassion, and as you say, mudita, which means joy for others. These are often considered as practices of radiating these things, loving kindness, compassion, joy for others. I don't so much see it that way as, in fact, a development of these qualities within ourselves. The development of metta, loving kindness, within ourselves, of compassion, karuna, within ourselves, not for ourselves, the ability to have compassion as a quality, and mudita, in turn, to have joy for other people's success, pleasure, and be happy for other people's happiness. Sometimes it's called sympathetic or empathetic joy, mudita. The fourth of the Brahma Viharas is equanimity. Now this actually will come as a result of the former three, eventually. It's slightly different, whereas the first three can be, well, they are inextricably linked. In fact, if you have loving kindness, you will have compassion. With compassion, you have loving kindness. And also, with both those, you have joy for others. And they are qualities to be developed in oneself. This is an important thing to remember. Not something we give. Of course, we can give love, we can give compassion, or we can share love, we can share compassion by the very nature of having those qualities. Like a flower has its beauty, and a flower has its perfume, to be enjoyed by all whom experience the flower. The flower itself has developed these qualities of beauty and wonderful perfume in itself to be enjoyed by all that experience the flower itself. It, in a way, of course, by some frequencies, it is radiating its light, its beauty, its aroma, its smell, but technically it is just there, and these are qualities it have which we experience. And with the development of metta, with the development of compassion, karuna, compassion, loving kindness and compassion, we have these qualities which will be experienced by all those beings, all beings, not just other humans, that we come into contact with, and also that know us, associate with us, and maybe even people that don't know us, that are within our presence. Now, it can be said that if you have enough of this, that in the practice of meditation, maybe you can, or maybe you can't, radiate this all around the world and around the universe. For me, I tend to prefer to develop this quality in myself in order that it will be shared with others in the real way of contact, of experience within each other's company and presence. So with regards to healing, when you say what is the difference between giving metta, mudita and other healing techniques, of course, having loving kindness, having compassion and having mudita, joy for others, will assist anyone who is suffering in that respect as a kind of healing. But it isn't a specific healing process. Whereas what you then describe as other healing techniques like Reiki, etc., and I don't know anything about Reiki, etc., or say acupuncture or hot stones, that could be Reiki, for all I know. Any of these other healing techniques they are just that. They are healing techniques. They are for physical healing. Of course, this aids mental healing also. There are proven successful methods of helping also with emotional healing, psychological healing, like addiction. Acupuncture can be successful in some cases for helping people with addiction problems, as one example. The difference being is loving kindness, compassion, joy for others, and the equanimity, the fourth of the four Brahma Viharas, are not healing methods. They will certainly assist the healing of our own physical and emotional being, because they give us a sense of well-being, always having happiness and joy for others, having compassion for others and loving kindness for others gives us an enormous sense of well-being. And this is very important for both mental and physical health. But they're not specific healing techniques. So that's what I would say is the main difference. Is healing others allowed in Buddhism? As Buddhist monks and as Buddhist practitioners, there's nothing in the suttas or in the Buddhist scriptures specifically teaching us how to heal people. Certainly how to improve people's lives by sharing the experience of the Dharma, how to end suffering in this lifetime through the understanding of its cause, desire, the root defilements of greed, hatred and delusion, the teachings of the Buddha, sharing the Dharma, offering people refuge in terms of this protective nature of the Buddha, our teacher, the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha, who lives on to this day, continuing those teachings in his lineage, as his legacy, to help all beings be free from suffering. But in a not as specifically physical healing way that I think you're referring to, as in taking away either a physical problem of a pain, an arthritic knee, for instance, or emotional depression, for instance. Now, of course, this practice will help all of those things, like I began with my headache earlier when I spoke. Yeah, I mean, if I have a headache, the best thing I can do, when I injured my back recently, the best thing I could do, well, I couldn't think of anything to do, so I thought, well, I'll meditate. And this always has that effect of getting rid of the pain, not necessarily because I go into samadhi and don't notice the pain, but the relaxation of the body. As you allow the body to settle, it relaxes and the tensions dissipate. And when the tensions dissipate, the pain is often removed that way, because a lot of our pain is secondary. It is a very small pain, but we tense up around the pain and therefore create a much bigger effect that the pain is having. And then we have the emotional disliking of the pain to rub salt into the wound, if you like, to make it even worse than it really is. And through meditation, of course, we see it in all its impermanence, in a more truthful way, because there's nothing we can do about it. It is there, we see it as there, we know by its very nature it is impermanent and it will go away. So soon will not be there. Knowing what it's like when it isn't there, we're able to see how it will be after the pain has gone. And just knowing that makes it seem in this moment when there is pain very much less of a thing to be concerned about. You don't need to necessarily take a pill or do anything particular except relax. Now, we can't just say relax, so we just sit and let our body settle and allow the body to relax. Similarly, by doing this, by doing nothing, in fact, no thing at all, allowing this body to settle and in turn relax, also our minds can settle too and become calm and less aggravated by the irritation of pain that you might be suffering. So in that way it's healing. But you ask, are we allowed in Buddhism to harm? Actually, this word allowed comes up because I often mention rules. the strict rules, the Vinaya, that is called, that monks abide by, our training rules to live this life. So if you're referring to monks, well, it isn't specifically mentioned as a rule, other than we are obliged, there is a rule, we are obliged to care for sick monks, of course, whether they are junior or senior, always care for them, look after them, nurse them, take care of all of their needs, medically, physically, whatever we can do. But hands-on healing that I think you're referring to, of this kind of either Reiki nature, acupuncture nature, etc. I don't really know any others I'm not thinking of, but even the production of Ayurvedic medicines, potions and this, that and the other, is not really part of our practice, not a skill we go outwardly to develop. But of course different traditions, different schools of Buddhism, certainly in the Tibetan traditions, have different views on that and are very skilled in healing itself. So no, there's no rule to say we're not allowed. In fact, none of the rules are really about not allowing things, because they're not really rules. They're guidelines about refraining from certain activities of body, speech and mind in order to maintain this core one precept. As lay Buddhists, you have 5 precepts: not to kill, steal, sexual misconduct, lie, or take intoxicants, which are all about doing no harm to yourself or to others. So if you just take one precept of doing no harm, then everything else in terms of the Vinaya and the rules, we have 227 precepts as Buddhist monks, and nuns have even more, 311. If you take all of those rules into account, they are just in order to ensure that we do no harm to ourselves or others through any acts of body, speech and mind, by refraining from certain things, certain activities of body, speech and mind. So there isn't a body of Buddhist police saying, you're not allowed to do that, here's a fine, or you must disrobe. We would go to our senior our elders, our senior monks in the Sangha, and share with them our mistakes, our errors, if we have done something, however serious, in order that we don't have anything on our conscience undeclared. And if it is an offence, we would make a determination not to do that thing again. If it was really serious, we may have to disrobe. But we would rather that than go on living a lie, therefore breaking the 4th precept. Because whether or not you confess a sin, whether or not you are caught by an authority, you know, as I discussed in the last talk, we know we are our own judge, jury, and firstly our own witnesses to any offences we may incur. So finally, is it harmful for the healer or the receiver? Well, I would hope not, but I'm not an expert in healing, so I don't know whether some things could be. You could be referring to, there are these practices in some traditions, which I know nothing really about, whereby you really take in other people's ailments, you mentally absorb them through sort of a pranayama breathing technique, maybe, breathing in their ailments and breathing out good health to them. And I have heard, and maybe it's mythological, I don't know whether it's true, that some monks can become very ill as a result of this compassion that they're having. So there is an example of compassion, perhaps used in not so much a positive way. Rather than actually helping, you are maybe experiencing extra suffering yourself as a result of compassion. And that isn't right compassion. That isn't practicing karuna, compassion, as we are in a beneficial way. Because it should first always be the case that you are looking after your own personal development, both emotionally and physically, in order that you can then share that and look after others. If you harm yourself, you can then no longer look after other people in any capacity. So it's very important always to begin with oneself. Not in a selfish way, in a practical way. Like with the air mask that comes from an aeroplane, before you can put it on the baby or the person that's helpless next to you, you must use it yourself. Then find them their mask in order that they can breathe also. Because if you don't help yourself to breathe, you will die, you can't help them. So we start always with metta towards ourselves, loving kindness, then compassion and mudita to all others after we begin with ourselves. So you shouldn't be able to put yourself in a position of doing yourself any harm. Okay, so the next question. Are you travelling now? I wish you a safe journey. Well, thank you. No, I'm not travelling yet. I'm travelling at the end of this Vasa. So on the 29th I'll go to the city. That's the full moon of October. So hopefully there'll be no traffic strikes, but regardless I have to go to that. It's the Pavarana, which is marks the end of the Vasa, this rains retreat, when we there offer our we say, please forgive me for any acts of body, speech and mind. We say it in a little Pali verse. To all the people we've been living with here, sharing this Vasa with, and at the monastery where I've been going for the Patimokkha and other things. And this is how we always part company after this particular ceremony. Then the following day on the 30th, then I begin travelling. So that's when I'll be heading towards Sri Lanka. So the full moon of October. So I'm going the wrong way. No, that's the wrong button. And so someone is saying that karma is the same as Newton's third law. Now, this is an interesting concept, but in Newton's first law is that all actions have a reaction. So if you push against something, there's going to be resistance. So even if it doesn't push back, there is resistance. This is the reaction. Your action of pushing, the reaction is either not moving or it resisting being moved, or it may push back. This is a physical aspect of cause and effect. It is so it comes under the science of physics. It's also calculable. You can calculate through formula, through mathematics, through science, the effects of an action and its reaction in this format. So it's very much in that sense, it's very real. But whereas karma is very different, it's incalculable. We have no knowing as to the results, the effect, vipaka of karma. Karma just means action, so you're absolutely right. And this description is a good analogy, but where it's different is with karma, which is actions, of all actions of body, speech and mind, we cannot calculate what results will be. We can have a good idea. Do good, you'll get good back. Do bad, you'll get bad back. But when that will be, how that will be, in what way, you cannot know. It's undetermined. It's not something you can work out through science. And the Buddha said this as one of the 4 achintayas, is we should not try to work out the effects of karma. What we can know is right here and now. And that is your former lives. Do you know anything about your previous lives? Probably not. Unless you've attained to enlightenment, it's unlikely you can remember previous lives, or even understand or believe that there were such things as previous lives. However, what you are doing exactly now, here and now, in whatever form that may be, man, woman, layperson, monk, married, single, working, not working, whatever that is as a result of causes and conditions that have caused that to be. So previous karma, whether in this lifetime or a previous lifetime. Can you predict future lifetimes or your future and the effects of karma to come? No, but what you can do is what you are doing right now, here, in this moment, will determine how future lifetimes will be as a result of causes and conditions you are putting in place right now. So us doing good now will create good causes and conditions for the future rebirth, or future vipaka, results of karma within this lifetime. So this is where there's another dimension to Newton's third law when we see karma. Okay, so which meditation technique you use, which meditation tradition? Okay, I'll answer the second question first because that's the most easy. I have been trained in the Thai Forest tradition of Ajahn Chah, who is a famous, well-known Thai Forest master, enlightened being, arahant, if you like, whom established actually the first Thai Forest monasteries in the West, which is how I came to be connected with that tradition. Not the only reason, because then I went away, I came to India and explored all of the other traditions, and then went back to my monastery in England and furthered my development, my training, my understanding and my practice, having decided that yes, this forest, this Theravada, firstly, this school of Buddhism, this tradition, but within a subcategory of Theravada, the Thai Forest tradition was the most simplest form of monasticism and the most simplest form of practice that I found would be appropriate to me. I was very attracted by Tibetan and the Mahayana colours and beauty and glamour of it all, having come from very much a Western and Catholic background. But I could see there was a lot of complication in there, a lot of things that I consider even now a bit, for my own benefit and practice, unnecessary to what I'm looking for, which is simple sitting meditation, developing skillful mind states, reducing unskillful mind states, and trying to become free from suffering in this lifetime, which is what the Buddha taught. And Theravada means that, school of the elders, really the closest we can get to the word of the Buddha in his simplest teachings, without the bits that may have come about and added on a bit later. From good sources, good causes, and through good understanding and research, and nothing against them. But if you want the raw, basic, lowest common denominator, no accessories version, this tradition that I chose is that. Now, I didn't ultimately ordain in that tradition, but I've been trained in that tradition over many years. Because of various reasons. I ordained here in India in the Theravada tradition, so it's exactly the same ordination, but where they have various different categories and sects, and it all gets very complicated, that's another issue. But that is the tradition, and the meditation that is generally taught in that is really it's what the Buddha taught. Primarily, I would say most Theravada or Thai Forest Buddhist monks are practicing anapanasati, breath meditation, but it isn't really so much when you are practicing all the time, when you are a monk, it isn't really so much about meditation and technique. I don't sit there and every time now when I meditate go through the same that you would go through when you first go on a retreat, a meditation retreat. yourself maybe as a lay person for the first time, or even after quite some years of practice, the routine you might go through at the end of a busy day to settle your mind down, maybe scanning through the body, starting at the top of the head and down to the tip of the toes, maybe watching the breath but in a very systematic way, maybe then practicing metta even, radiating loving kindness, this kind of process, which is often a technique that is used to facilitate relaxing, settling, calming, and even developing states of samadhi is quite possible. I think when you become more experienced in meditation and it's what you do, all you do, you're really not going through that technique thing. Of course, yes, I am watching the breath, but I'm also watching the breath throughout all of my daily activities, not just when I sit down. I'm always coming back to the breath, much like you are coming back to the breath when your mind wanders during the meditation. When my activities may momentarily take me away from the breath, not specifically, I'm breathing in 1, I'm breathing out 1, I'm breathing in 2, I'm breathing out 2, or not specifically, this breath is long, this breath is short, this breath is deep, this breath is shallow. Not like that. The whole body of the breath, the air I'm breathing in, is known as is also the air, the whole body of the air I'm breathing out is known. And this is my, not technique, not even method, this is my practice of mindfulness throughout all my day of daily activities, everything I'm doing. And what is present always within all your activities is your bodily feelings. And the best way that they are represented are, two ways. In your cardiac response, your heart rate, and your respiratory response, your breathing. The most obvious of those two, without having your fingers permanently on the pulse, is breathing. Mindfulness of the breath throughout your day assists in so many areas of your life, as well as calming and cooling and helping with concentration. So whether a monk or a lay person, this should be encouraged. So in answer to your question, I would say my technique would be, if I had one, is anapanasati, but I don't sit down and determine to watch the breath. I sit down for samadhi. When I'm chanting in there and I say a few minutes samadhi, I don't say sit down and start watching the breath and doing this and doing that with instructions, because at that time we're meditating for 3 to 5 minutes, no time at all. So with practice you can sit for 3 to 5 minutes and really absorb into nothingness, doing nothing for that 3 to 5 minutes, not watching the breath, not thinking about the breath, but you know it's there, of course. Your awareness is still there. In 3 to 4 minutes you probably will not go into deep stages of absorption whereby you are in arupa jhanas, without awareness of the body. There's not sufficient time. Some can, and maybe it is possible. I can't say, but this is the distinction perhaps between practitioners that have been developing these skills of meditation, of samadhi, over a long period of time, using the techniques, the supports of, say, body scanning, anapanasati, and all the other different, the Buddha alone has given us 40 meditation objects. Of course, there are, in other traditions, in other practices of meditation, many others that one can account for. But generally speaking, in my tradition, we start off with the breath. And if we're talking to people about meditation, we'll be talking about watching the breath. If I'm giving guided meditation, then I'm giving guided meditation on anapanasati, the breath. Actually, someone asked a question about that, so I don't know whether I can find the question, but I can remember it. Here it is. Imagine that the Buddha is sitting in front. I meditate absorbing qualities in and exhaling the bad qualities out. Is it good? I do it for hours. It's very good you do it for hours because you're watching the breath as you breathe in and you're watching the breath as you breathe out. And it's very good you have the concept of breathing in. How do you word it? Purity? The qualities of the Buddha, maybe, yes. And you're breathing out your own bad qualities. Okay, you don't have bad qualities, let me say that. Maybe you'll have some impure thoughts or some impurities. But I try to be positive in all of this practice. The way I look at this is more along the lines with not just when we're sitting, but we can again use this during our daily activities. When we're breathing in, we see the whole body of the breath as invigorating, as in refreshing, as in thirst quenching, as in enjoyable as we breathe in. Cooling, like that. As we breathe out, we're just breathing out used air. We've used the air. And along with it is going the impurities from physically, our bodies, and also our associations of what would you call it, waste, the leftovers, the remainder is leaving the body. Not in a negative way, because you're making valuable space, not as in the element of space, but room for the absorption, then the re-inhalation of more fresh, thirst-quenching, invigorating, energizing, enjoyable breath in again. So this is in a way taking this imagining that you have, you're imagining with the Buddha in front of you, the qualities coming in and the bad qualities going out. It's taking it into the realms of reality or truthfulness, because you are breathing in clean, invigorating, oxygenating air, and you are exhaling exhaust, used air, carbon dioxide. This is how the body works. This is respiration. That is the truth. But it is also very mentally uplifting when you really watch the breath in this way. So what you're doing is, you're asking, is it good? Yes, it is very good. And if that imaginary idea helps, then that's okay too. But if you turn that imagination into the truth and reality, so there's no imagination, then your mind isn't having to think. You're just seeing the air, the breath, for what it is, as the Buddha teaches in the Anapanasati Sutta. Knowing the whole body of the breath as you breathe in. If is it short, is it long, is it deep, is it shallow, is it fast, is it slow? Knowing the quality of it, the temperature, and the enjoyment of it. This is another way of looking at that. Hi, is there any way to join you? Yes, you are joining me now. If you're watching this, or when you were watching that, you were with me. I'm not sure whether you mean join me physically, come and see me. You can do. I've had people here this afternoon and yesterday. I think there's people coming tomorrow. More and more people are coming here to see me that are local, of course. Now, of course, if you're in another country, that's not very easy. If you mean join me as in ordain and become a monk, then not really, because I haven't been a monk long enough myself to have a student, a novice. I can certainly have lay people join me, help me, assist me. If you want ordination, you'd have to go to a main monastery and go through the whole process of being a lay person living there, becoming an anagarika, so giving up, taking the 10 precepts, then after some time becoming a samanera, a novice monk, for a couple of years at least. So this whole process takes a few years. Then you have upasampada, you become a bhikkhu, and then you have to stay in that monastery for 5 years before you can go alone, and therefore join me as another monk. But anyone can join me when I go travelling. I always say where I am. And physically, if you can find me, like people finding me here now can come and see me and ask me questions, just talk, sit and meditate. Not so much meditate. If you're here, you should ask me some questions, because you can meditate alone. You don't need me for that. But this is nice, and in that way you can. But I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean by the question, But the very wonderful way that many people are joining me now is this way, by this support you give me, which allows me to continue talking about your questions and comments like this, which gives me certainly the feeling that you are joining me. Well, not feeling, it is the reality. You are joining me, otherwise I'd have nothing to answer. I'd certainly have something to talk about. I can talk about the Dharma all day long. Oh, I've just remembered what I was going to talk about today, so that'll have to wait until the next talk. But it's an interesting situation I had with some cows over here, which reminded me of so many Dharma-related things. So when I go wandering in Sri Lanka, when I'm on this charaka, or tudong as they call it in Thailand, but the Pali word for wandering is charaka. I'm not on any particular pilgrimage, I'll just be wandering. So when I do this, I will be coming across things each and every day which are the truths, the facts of life, and I will be relating to those to you, not like a travel vlog, because I will always steer clear of that. There's plenty of those about the country I'm going to. There's hundreds of them, because just mentioning that I'm going to Sri Lanka on this phone makes your YouTube channel show all of that stuff, whether you've searched for it or not. It's very clever, YouTube. Anyway, this information's there, but I will be relating to you from a Dharma point of view, the Dharmic reality of the things I come across in each and every day, which is very much part of the point of Charaka, relating Dharma to real life. Now, I know you're not all wandering around sort of Asia and things like that, but you come across things in day-to-day life, each and every day, even just on the way to work or on the way to the shops, which are the Dharma, because the Dharma is just nature, it's just the truth. Not nature in the sense of forests and mountains and trees and lakes, nature as in human nature, in a city, in a built-up area, in a car park. It's still nature. Nature is everywhere. That breath I was talking about, breathing in, it's as natural, it's nature. It may not be great, the air you're breathing in, the place you're staying. I think that's largely responsible for my headache yesterday. Although I heard a very good Ajahn, he was saying it's to do with some air pressure and weather or something, but he was in Thailand. So it could be any number of things. Anyway, it's gone now. However, this I hope to share with you over the coming few months of this Charaka practice when I'm heading around where I'm going. I can say now, I've told you, haven't I, Sri Lanka, although I still haven't told my my bosses yet, so to speak. Anyway, so there was a couple of questions about that very subject. So let me just go back to... Oh, sorry, I'm not very organised again, am I? Yes. A question. Have you got a Satnav and a compass on your phone to aid your journey, or will you use the stars to guide you? It's very nice to think of using the stars to guide me. I'm not sure I'd know how to do that. I'm not a nautical person. I've been sailing. I love the sea. I like sailing. But I don't know how to navigate that way. I'll be walking. My travelling will largely be walking. Although the chances are, being a monk, I will be offered lifts. So I won't turn them down. If I'm going somewhere and these people will take me there, I will accept, and it's appropriate, I will accept lifts. I'm not going on some kind of mission to determine to walk so many miles. It's not that kind of practice. If I can arrive somewhere suitable for my practice, sitting, meditation, and talking to you, then that's what I'll do. And it will happen, I know, because that happens here, it happens everywhere. I, however, will need to know where I'm going. Yeah, of course, it's a smartphone, it has on there Google Maps, it has a compass, it has, directions, sat-navs, but actually I won't be using those things. I generally keep all of that location stuff and those things turned off because they do tend to use up the battery, and one thing I don't have access to is charging these phones up. Now they do last a long time, it seems, the batteries on them. When I say them, is that I do have two for this reason. So for SIM card reasons and for I have two very cheap phones rather than one expensive phone. It seems a much easier way to do this. Also, when you're travelling, there are other aspects of having two phones that make life a lot easier with the travelling process. But I don't need to go into all of that. So in any case, I'll have them both pretty much switched off and on silent or airplane mode to save the battery, because I don't really need to be anywhere at a specific time. I won't be driving on the roads or in busy cities. If I'm walking along the coast, then it's quite easy. You keep the sea either to your right or to your left. If you're on an island, it depends whether you're going clockwise or anti-clockwise. That's quite easy. And the sun is really my compass. I'll be walking either in the latter part of the afternoon or the early part of the morning, and the sun is either then coming up in the east or going down in the west. So depending on the direction I want to go in, I head in roughly that direction. And with the sea or the coast to my right or to my left, that's all I need to know. That's as specific as it needs to be. Without either of those things, even if you get into the middle of nowhere where you can see no coast, or even say know whether the sun is specifically at midday, it's hard to know which is north, south, east or west, you generally can just sit and wait, or then I could have access, I suppose, to the phone, but then it largely depends on whether it works in that place. A way I've found often of navigating when I've been a bit lost like that before, though, is with what I moan about here, these pylons, because in many of these places where you're really out in the middle of nowhere, there are electric pylons, because they get electricity from cities to other places. And that can't be done underground. It can be, but it's very difficult to do that. So you'll find that pylons, unless you're in the Sahara Desert, there are pylons which generally go in as straight a line as possible from one place to another. So you can follow that line to some extent and not get too lost, as long as you've got a pylon in sight somewhere in the distance, in front of you or somewhere behind you. You know you're roughly going in the right direction and not round in circles. But I don't think it's going to be that complicated. I'm not on some uncharted territory. I think Sri Lanka's quite a tourist-driven place. It's a busy-ish place for that reason. There are going to be many tuk-tuk drivers stopping, wanting to give me lifts. There are going to be other ordinary people stopping and giving me lifts. And I'll take advantage of that if it's appropriate and at the right time of day, and I have a destination in mind for that day. But it doesn't require much planning. But thank you for your question. I know it was just genuinely a question. It was a genuine question out of concern of yours, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I shouldn't get too lost. And if I do, I can just sit and meditate. I don't know what time I started this now. I'll go for this shortish question. The irony is that there's sexism and agism in Buddhism, when the Buddha's teachings are all that actually matter. So I think this comes from a talk recently, or some questions and answers, where I might have mentioned age being a restriction in some places towards taking ordination as a monk. As it is perhaps in my country, I think the age limit is 50 to 55. Now, this I suppose you could say is ageism, but I think it's just really a practical aspect of monastic life in Western countries isn't geared up to caring for the elderly. And if you ordain late in life, you're going to need care. Whereas in Asia, not only monastic life, but family life is more geared up towards caring for the elderly within your own family. I mean, you don't send in Asian countries, they don't send their elderly off to an old people's home. There's no such thing, or even hospital. They stay at home with the family. Whereas we tend to do that more in the West, send our elderly to a nice place, an old people's home, or retirement residence, or in the case of the sick, they spend longer in hospital, whereas they're more cared for at home in Asian countries. So in terms of Buddhism, there really isn't ageism in the so-called East, if we can call it that, whereas there is perhaps ageism in the so-called West, if you can call it that. However, There isn't sexism in the so-called West because of its progress in terms of gender equality and such like. There's much less, if none at all, sexism in terms of ordination, becoming a bhikkhuni or a bhikkhu. I know it's new, so I don't want to go into that whole debate of that. But in the East, of course, in the Asian countries, there is. It is still, in some places, there aren't bhikkhunis. There aren't nuns, so to speak. There is an equivalent or something different, something else. So, in a way, yeah, I see what you're saying. There's sexism and ageism, but I think you'll find that if there is sexism, it would be in the East. If there is ageism, it's in the West. So if you're an old man, go to the East. If you're a lady, go to the West, and it solves the problem because you've covered those areas of discrimination, haven't you? Because in the East, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can go to a monastery, you'll be gratefully accepted for ordination, as long as you're healthy. You can't go in there needing health treatment and all of these things. And I think this relates to a question I had whereby someone did have quite a list of conditions as to what they would require out of the monastery, but they were prepared to pay. Well, that's not how it works. That's how nursing homes work. You pay for your care, your treatment. In Buddhism, no money is required. There's no money involved. Monks give up the use of money. In fact, as a layperson, the first stage of ordination, anagarika, you give up the use of money. In most cases, some anagarikas still are able to use money for practical purposes, but mostly not. And as a samanera, definitely not, once you're on the 10 precepts and the 75 training rules. So, yes, well, I know the time now. It says here on my phone, but I have no idea what time I started. So, I think what I'll do is make the assumption that I've spoken for about 40 minutes, and if that's not the case and I've shortchanged you, I apologise. If I've gone quite a bit over that, I also apologise for keeping up too much time of yours. But appreciate your attention if you've been listening. I really hope there's something that I've said today that's of some use and you can use, and also share with anyone you might think might also find it useful. But if not, then please just forget all about it and don't let it trouble you. Just be happy and stay well. So thank you. Yes.